Vertical dance, as it takes place on the exterior or interior of buildings, pushes the boundaries of conventional theatrical performance in a number of ways. And one of those is that in a theatre space with a stage and a raked audience coming above it, the audience watches the dance from above. In The Descent of the Angel, the audience were on the ground and the dancer came from a point of 50 metres above the audience. Thinking about the disruption of space in vertical dance, the wall becomes almost like a metaphor. The idea of being in that place of in-betweenness, of being sort of in the breach between inside and outside, it gives you a feeling that you're perhaps able to make kind of either playful or subversive actions, or take some actions that are out of the ordinary, that are pushing the boundaries a bit, literally. So you might think of this as like writing invisible graffiti on the wall through the actions of the body of the dancer. But also asking questions like who owns the outside of the building, especially if it's a public building like the Guildford Cathedral, is in a sense a building that wants to invite people in. And so one of the questions that I feel I want to ask all the time is, well, why can't we use the building in lots of different ways? And one of those ways would be dancing down the outside of it. Another one might be climbing up it. So architects create these buildings to be used in particular ways. They've got doors which you walk in and walk out of, windows that you look in and look out of. Maybe not so much with the cathedral, but windows that are designed to be looked at and to be beautiful. But how can you subvert the architect's intention by doing something different on that building? Finding a different use for it. What happens when you borrow the equipment of climbing and attach it to a dancer and then ask them to dance on a wall? This creates a sense of spatial confusion for the dancer initially, because the wall becomes the floor. So the dancer's standing on the wall as if it were the floor, which means that up is actually to the side or in front, but not up. So all the general spatial consciousness that you have when you're standing on the ground is completely disrupted. As Venetian vertical dance choreographer Vanda Moretti says, that the dancer experiences complete disorientation and deconstruction of their sense of space. And so the job is then to reorientate and reconstruct the sense of space. And then what happens is that the dancer becomes fluent with this new spatial world, but when the audiences watch it, they experience a sense of spatial confusion. You can watch audience members lying on the ground or turning their heads or trying to find a way of looking at it that kind of brings the floor back to the horizontal, away from the vertical.
Kate Lawrence is a lecturer at the University of Surrey, where her research focuses on site-specific and vertical dance. I spoke to her about her work during a training session in the Department of Dance, Film and Theatre. Kate, you've described a really high level of skill and knowledge in terms of being able to perform off these buildings. Can you talk a little bit about the preparation and training that's necessary to prepare yourself to become a vertical dancer?
Yeah, certainly. Seeing as we've got Jo here, maybe use her as an example. So, Jo, if you could just stand facing up, or sit, yes. So this is the kind of position that we start with, and this is actually quite tricky to when you first do it, because the rope wants to move, and to actually find this still place is really hard. Can you lean back so you're standing? And then this would be the next thing, is to try and find a place where you're standing. Just bring your upper body up a bit. There we go. So it's like you're standing on the ground, but you're actually standing on the wall. You can sit up now, Jo. It's quite hard. It's very hard on the core muscles. If you could face the side now, and you can see how the harness shifts, yeah. And then there's a lot of pressure put on this part of the body, partly because all the weight of gravity is coming through this point. And so again, we're trying to create that straight line, so that again she's walking sideways as opposed to. It's difficult to keep a straight line. Really difficult. Can you just do that? Other way. This is what most people do. And now bend your arm. So people just want to get back onto the vertical rather than staying on that pure horizontal line. And because we don't have mirrors, we rely on the people watching to tell you, and eventually developing the sense. And you'll watch people going like this, because it's sometimes really hard to understand where to put your head.
Jo makes that look very easy. Is it easy?
It might look easy, but it also might look like impossible to do in a way, because it's a skill. It just takes time and a good head for being in a different position. Okay. And I think that's the main thing, is that it takes time to reorientate yourself to this kind of strange world, being upside down. And then from that, can you just do some runs? You start to actually, after controlling a still rope, so that you feel you've become very sensitive to the rope, you start to introduce a bit of a pendulum, and then from there you can do a set of jumps and leaps, Joe. So what you're trying to do is do a leap that takes the whole pendulum. As you learn to do vertical dance, you learn also that the rope has its own dance and its own mode of response, and you have to learn to collaborate with that, because if not, you end up bashing into the wall. And often what you'd like to do in your mind, you actually can't do, because the physics of what the rope will do and its momentum doesn't let you do it. It often changes the timing of what you do, because the rope works in a pendulum, so it's not a straight line when you come away from the wall or when you go across the wall. It's a parabolic flight, so it has a little curve. So you always come up at the end of your flight. And if you forget that, you get into all sorts of trouble. Often the dancer will have a desire to do a certain thing, but the rope isn't cooperative, it's quite disobedient. So the dancer has to find a way of the rope becoming an extension of their own body, so that the rope and the dancer are in collaboration and cooperating. So it's about kind of harnessing that disobedient rope and bringing it into the process of the choreography. So working with it and understanding where the rope wants to go and how that affects what you want to do as a dancer. And visually, the rope is literally like a tail for the dancer, because it hangs down, and the dancer may do like a somersault or something, and then the rope will follow and make its own pattern in the air. So it has its own expressive qualities.
Kate, I know that you've danced on the Cathedral of Guildford and also the National Library of Wales. Can you talk a little bit about how you find a space and how that process unfolds for you?
Well, I started off, the first building that I did was the library on campus, the George Edwards Library, and I wanted to do a performance on the side of a building because I'd only really worked inside in these spaces. So I spent a lot of time walking around the campus with people from estates and buildings, looking at possible spaces that had the right rigging potential. And following that, I talked to Pauline Johnson, who organised the Cathedral Festival and who is the programmer for the International Music Festival. And she had a booking for the cathedral for the whole day, and to do something different rather than just put a concert in there. And she'd seen the performance on the side of the library and really wanted to do something with me descending the side of the cathedral, which was great because I had been able to see the cathedral when I was performing on the library, and I'd been thinking that should be next. And so I got to go up the hill and up the tower and come off that.
So you chose the first space, and then the second space sort of chose you, but you wanted to do it anyway.
Yes. And then it was a matter of negotiating with the cathedral staff and getting the permission of the dean and chapter as to whether we could do it. And they were very, very keen, but they were concerned to make sure that we were going to be safe, because one of their big concerns was how bad it would look for the cathedral if somebody
died.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is fair enough.
Which is fair enough. And so they had a steeplejack who'd been working there for 40 years, who came up with us, checked all our rigging, and in fact was incredibly helpful, and ended up putting a bit of scaffolding in for us so that not so much so it would be safer, but so it would be more aesthetically pleasing, how I came over the top.
Right.
So he really got really involved in the project and really excited about the potential and particularly on the aesthetic side. So it was really nice.
I know in your first performance on the side of the library there was one very distinct position where you're kind of upside down in a crucifix position, and I thought if you were to do that on the side of the cathedral it could cause a kind of international outcry almost.
Well, that position was in the cathedral performance, but I just moved through it, and
So
I
you were
kind of
careful to take
fluttered
it
a bit, as
Okay.
if I was more angelic than kind of than the kind of. I didn't make it such an obvious crucifix shape, because I was quite keen not to do that
And
kind
be
of,
respectful to the architecture and the space and the
yes,
institution.
and you know, if somebody allows you to do something, it's a real privilege to be allowed to do that kind of thing on the side of a building like a cathedral, and I wouldn't want to abuse that privilege.
No.
So I want to be sensitive to kind of the kinds of symbols that I use in the choreography. So I do use the upside down position a lot, and actually the upside down position in terms of an angel kind of suggests a fallen angel, and I think that's quite different from doing an upside down crucifix on the side of a cathedral.